Theresa Caputo, a medium from Long Island, decided to get a divorce. Theresa Caputo, a psychic from Long Island, eventually bid her new spouse farewell. But it was a difficult one. In a fit of wrath, she flung her shoe at him and ejected him from the house. Theresa claimed that she has never been able to spend quality time with her family since being married, not even having the opportunity to travel or have regular conversations with them. She developed a deep loathing over time as a result of this pressure and neglect. She ultimately came to the conclusion that this connection could not be maintained. Theresa Caputo promptly decided to file for divorce and evicted her husband from the residence. The world of the living and the whispers of the spirit realm are two worlds that Theresa Caputo, who is known to millions as the Long Island medium, has always had to balance. Her fiery nature, special gift, and compassion won her admirers. However, most people never observed the private life full of hardships that went on behind the flashing cameras, the television lights, and the long line of people waiting for a reading. After her divorce from her first husband, Larry, Theresa thought she had finally found happiness. Persuaded that this phase of her life would be different, she married a new man. After a long day of reading, she needed company, someone to eat dinner with late at night, and someone to support her when the burden of other people's sorrows became too much to bear. She desired balance, travel, and laughter, the opportunity to live for herself rather than only for other people. Everything appeared to be all right at first. Her new spouse was affable, considerate, and encouraging. At first, he was impressed by her efforts. But gradually, the basis of their marriage started to show fractures. It began with the minor details. Theresa saw that her husband appeared impatient whenever her kids, Victoria and Larry Jr., visited. When Theresa's children wanted their mother's attention, he would withdraw into another room or roll his eyes at lengthy family tales. He would dismissively remark, "They're grown. Let them deal with their own issues." However, Theresa was more than just a mother. She was a mother all the time. Her children always came first, regardless of their age. She felt as though she was suddenly being forced to choose between raising her kids and the man she married. The issue became more pressing as the weeks stretched into months. Her new husband wanted to travel far from Long Island for dinners, vacations, and trips. He would insist that we simply leave. "Let's get away and live for ourselves," Theresa said, but she felt bound by guilt. Every time she consented to leave, she became aware of how much she was missing: dinners with friends, family birthdays, and even simply spending time on her daughter's couch discussing daily life. Theresa and her daughter sat down at her kitchen table one evening after returning from another weekend getaway. "Mom, you're different," Victoria murmured, gazing at her mother with sorrow in her eyes. "You're constantly gone and occupied. You are missed. Everyone here misses you." Theresa's heart was broken by those remarks. She reflected on her childhood home, the warm meals, and her strong relationship with her kids, and she became aware of how far she had fallen. She was losing her family in addition to herself. For what purpose? For a relationship that should have made her feel full but instead left her feeling empty? Theresa's attempt to discuss postponing an impending vacation so she could spend the weekend with her kids was the last straw one evening. Her husband lost it. He yelled, "You're obsessed with them. You never prioritized me. They are always the focus." Theresa sat quietly that night, her hands clutching the beads of her rosary. She prayed for courage, wisdom, and direction. In the silence, the ghosts murmured. "This isn't love anymore," she told herself for the first time. "Suffocation is what this is." The stress boiled over the following morning. In the living room, Theresa approached her husband. Shouting broke out throughout the argument. He said she wasn't providing enough and was selfish. She said he forced her into a life she didn't desire and tore her away from her family. Then, something inside her jerked. Theresa ripped off her high heel in a fit of wrath and threw it across the room, barely avoiding him. "Leave!" She let out a scream. "Leave my home. Leave my life. I am no longer able to do this." Her spouse was astonished and froze. However, Theresa wasn't done yet. "You're done here. she said as she strode to the door and flung it open. The marriage is over. I won't lose my family any more than I've already lost enough of myself. She then ejected him from there. Theresa sat with a cup of coffee later that night, by herself in her peaceful house. There was a sense of tranquility in the emptiness of the house. She glanced at her children's photos on the mantel. She didn't feel alienated in her own life for the first time in months. Theresa admitted, "Since I got married, I've never been able to spend proper time with my family," in an emotional statement to her close friends. "I haven't had the opportunity to spend time with them, go on excursions, or converse with them as much as I used to." And the animosity that sprang from that neglect grew into hatred. "I'm not like that. I don't want that kind of life. I've done enough. I'm now choosing my peace, my kids, and myself." It wasn't simple. There is never a divorce. However, the message her own heart had been sending her for months was eventually heard by Theresa Caputo, the woman who communicates with spirits and gives people closure. She also gave herself the reading she much needed this time. Some endings are actually beginnings wrapped in pain, not failures. Divorce meant more to Theresa than the dissolution of a marriage. It was taking back her freedom, her family, and her voice. She also silently thanked God, the spirits, and herself for having the guts to go as she sat peacefully that evening. But it was one of those cool autumn afternoons in Long Island where the sky is streaked with orange and gold, and the air had the subtle scent of a fireplace burning. A small, private group reading by Theresa Caputo was planned at a quaint community hall hidden close to the harbor. For the individuals assembled inside, the facility, which was merely a huge room with folding chairs, a coffee urn, and pastries on a table, felt like the most significant place in the world that day. 30 or so individuals sat in silence, some clutching Kleenex, others holding framed photographs in their hands, some tapping their feet nervously. A gentle hum of interest, optimism, and sorrow permeated the atmosphere. With her trademark blonde hair up, her nails done to perfection, and her usual exuberance, Theresa walked into the room. She gave everyone a warm grin and spoke in her well-known Long Island accent. "All right, let's get going. Since I pulled into the parking lot, Spirit has been conversing with me, so I know this is going to be a busy night." Even before the reading started, some members of the group were wiping their eyes and laughing uneasily. Theresa briefly closed her eyes, raised her hands, and uttered, "I want everyone to understand that love is at the center of everything that occurs here tonight, regardless of who shows up. Messages from the Spirit are meant to heal, not to harm." "Who's ready, then?" Before anyone could say anything, Theresa abruptly turned her head, as if someone had tapped her shoulder from the opposite side. She gestured to a female seated in the second row. With her dark brown hair pulled back in a bun and a folded sweater on her lap, as if it were the most valuable item she owned, the woman appeared to be in her mid-40s. Theresa leaned over and murmured, "You, honey. I need to come to you immediately, but I don't know your name. Spirit is making me feel as like something unexpected happened, and I'm having trouble breathing. Do you get this?" The woman nodded, her lips quivering. "Yes, I do," I said. Theresa went on. "All right, my love. One of the young men is coming forward. He is tall and displays big shoulders to me. He seems to have died suddenly, almost by accident, in my opinion. He's giving me the impression that he was here 1 second and then gone." The woman, already in tears, covered her mouth. "That's Daniel, my son. Last year, he lost his life in an automobile accident. He was just 22 years old." The room fell silent. Everyone in the gathering felt the weight of her loss, and a flood of compassion washed over them. Theresa's voice became steady, but soothing as she lowered her volume. "Your son requests that I tell you something immediately." "Mom, I came with you," he says repeatedly. "Do you get it? He's giving me the impression that he was right there with you when you entered this room today." The woman clutched the sweater in her lap as she broke down entirely. She murmured, "This was his sweater. I nearly skipped tonight's event. However, I felt compelled to. I kept chatting to him on the way here, pleading with him to accompany me tonight, if he could hear me." Leaning forward, Theresa's eyes were gentle, yet filled with assurance. You don't need to wonder any longer, honey. You were heard by him. He is present. And he wants you to know that he has been at your side every step of the way since he passed away, particularly when you feel him most strongly, as when you hold that sweater or are in the car.
You are not imagining that.
That's him. As if her whole being had been anticipating those words, the woman cried and nodded angrily. He's showing me music, too, Theresa added. I keep getting the impression from him that he uses songs to connect with you. Is there a particular music that makes you think of him? Or do you listen to the radio a lot? The woman let out a gasp. Oh my God, absolutely. Coldplay has a song called Fix You. It was his favorite. I could hear it everywhere after the funeral, including on the radio, in the grocery store, and even once when I entered a coffee shop. I assumed that was merely a coincidence. Theresa gave a knowing smile. When spirit is involved, coincidence doesn't exist. He uses that to alert you to his presence. Every time you hear that song, he seems to be saying, Mom, I'm still with you. I will always be by your side. The woman's tears were streaming down her face, but they were now tinged with a slight smile. Theresa wasn't finished, though. She cocked her head, as if paying close attention. He's mentioning your car as well. Have you recently experienced an issue with your car, such as a flat tire? The woman's shocked eyes grew wide. My tire blew out on the freeway 2 weeks ago. Despite my fear, I was able to stop safely. In fact, I uttered the words, Danny, please protect me. Theresa gave a strong nod. He was that person. He wants you to know that he was there to make sure you were okay. Mom, I can protect you now, but I couldn't save myself that night, he adds. The whole room gasped at that. The woman's message was so impactful that some of the audience members even began crying alongside her. After a minute, Theresa added, Your son is showing me a dog, a large dog. Did he own a dog, or do you? The woman chuckled through her tears. Yes, Max is the name of our German shepherd. Danny loved him. Max slept outside his bedroom door every night after his death, as if he were waiting for him. Theresa grinned. Well, according to your son, Max still feels him. Animals have heightened spiritual sensitivity. Therefore, it's Danny when Max perks up or looks at nothing. The woman's shoulders trembled as she simultaneously smiled and wept, the weight in her chest gradually starting to lessen. Listening, Theresa closed her eyes once more. Your son is placing his hand on my shoulder before I leave you, honey, and he's saying, Tell her I'm proud of her. He claims you've been blaming yourself, believing you could have done anything to stop what occurred. He wants you to know that nobody could have prevented it. It was his moment. Additionally, he wants you to do more than merely survive. Every time you laugh, Mom, I'm right there laughing with you, he adds. With tears streaming down her cheeks, the woman tightened her embrace on the sweater. Thank you so much. Thank you. I only needed to hear that. Because they had just witnessed something sacred, rather than because it was a performance. The gathering erupted in soft applause. Theresa covered her heart with her hand and uttered, Spirit has brought me here to remind you that love is eternal. Your son accompanied you today and will continue to accompany you daily until the day you are reunited. I believe that now, the woman whispered, smiling through her tears. The echo of those words, he came with you, remained in the air like a blessing, infusing the room with both pain and hope, reminding everyone that love endures even in the face of loss. Theresa then moved on to the next person. But it was a calm evening on Long Island, the sort of summer night when the air carried the bay's saltwater aroma. The Long Island medium, Theresa Caputo, was sitting at her kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee. She used to say that spirit selected her, not the other way around. And she experienced the same old pull in her chest tonight, the unmistakable feeling that someone on the other side wanted to speak up. Her phone rang shortly after that. Theresa was asked to meet with 2 families who had experienced unfathomable grief by a local community organizer. Despite having distinct tales, they were both grieving the loss of a loved one to cancer within the last year. Theresa was aware that she couldn't refuse. Both families were waiting when Theresa arrived at a peaceful community center the next afternoon. The first was the Rivera family, which included Maria, her younger son Mateo, and her adolescent daughter, Isabella. After a 2-year fight with pancreatic cancer, Carlos, their father and spouse, passed away. The Donovan family, which included Ellen, her adult son Brian, and her daughter-in-law Kelly, sat across from them. They had bid farewell to Ellen's husband, Thomas, who had given his all in the fight against lung cancer. Theresa's cheerful spirit strode in as if she were carrying sunlight, but the room seemed heavy with grief. She sat down after giving both mothers a nice smile and a hug. "All right," she continued, putting her hands on the table. "I want to start by saying thank you for believing in me. I'm already bouncing around because of spirit, so let's just accept it." Theresa's face changed very instantly. She gave a little gasp and felt her chest, who was unable to breathe at the end due to chest problems. Ellen's eyes began to well up with tears. "That was Thomas, my husband. His lungs were affected by the cancer. It was really difficult to watch him suffer." Theresa gave a soft nod. "I don't want her to remember me that way," he tells me as he steps forward. "Do you get that?" He claims that rather than the hospital bed, he wants you to remember his laugh and the way he used to whistle about the home. Ellen's smile turned to tears. "He always whistled, oh my God. Even when he was in the garage fixing stuff." Theresa gave a little laugh. "That's him. And he seems to be pleased with the way you handled things, Brian. Tell my son I see him and I'm proud, even though I know he took on responsibilities he wasn't ready for," he says. Brian immediately wiped his eyes. "I had to look after Mom, the house, and I was unsure if I was doing it correctly." Theresa leaned closer. "According to your father, you did everything correctly. Additionally, he expresses gratitude for your strength during your mother's absence. That is his way of confirming it." Together, the Donovans wept quietly as they sensed Thomas's presence in the room, which slightly eased their pain. Then there was Theresa, facing the Riveras. "The name Carlos is one that I hear repeatedly." "Carlos is who?" Maria quickly put her palm to her mouth. "That's my spouse." Theresa grinned broadly. "So that I wouldn't miss him, he literally yelled his name at me. Here he is, displaying a baseball glove to me. Was he a baseball player or coach?" Maria gave a brief nod. "Indeed. Prior to his illness, he coached our son Mateo's minor league team." Theresa's gaze grew softer. "Tell Mateo that I never left the field," he says. "He's giving me the impression that he was concerned about you, Maria, and I'm still watching every game. Worried that once he died, you wouldn't be as happy. He's showing me you cook, but your heart wasn't in it, therefore the food doesn't taste the same. Is that logical?" Maria cried softly. "I ceased preparing his favorite dishes. It was too difficult." Theresa grabbed her hand from across the table. "He advises start over. Prepare them. I'll be there while you cook." Isabella, who had been quiet up to this point, spoke in a tremulous tone. "Is he aware that I spent every night in the hospital with him?" Theresa's eyes were filled with empathy. "He claims that's what brought him peace, sweetie. I wasn't afraid because I wasn't alone," he tells me, "and he wants you to understand that it mattered more than you can ever know." A tiny smile cut through the girl's tears, which were streaming down her face. Theresa spent the next hour alternating between the two families. She occasionally shared their amusing little affirmations, such as their goofy nicknames, favorite songs, or even the way Carlos danced around the kitchen or Thomas always burned the Sunday pancakes, which only their loved ones knew. At other times, she left them in silence, so they could process the messages. Something had changed by the end of the session. Warmth took the place of the room's gloom, as though the families were being embraced by their loved ones. Theresa's eyes were filled with emotions as she gazed at both families. Grief becomes a part of who we are and never goes away. Your loved ones, however, want you to survive. Their love for you is the reason they battled so hard to remain here. They're still with you now that they're in spirit. You carry them forward with every laugh, every breath, and every memory. Both families embraced her firmly as they got up to go, muttering words of appreciation. They felt somewhat lighter for the first time in months, perhaps years. They were confident that their loved ones had not really abandoned them, so they could face tomorrow with that knowledge. Theresa thought back on the discussion as she drove home that evening. She was always in awe of Spirit's ability to mend shattered hearts. "Thank you, God, for letting me do this work," she said quietly to herself. Carlos and Thomas were also grinning somewhere, behind the veil, knowing that their families had at last gotten the consolation they required. But quietly, the brilliant Long Island morning broke. Theresa Caputo entered the little community hall where a local veteran support group was meeting while wearing her trademark bright leopard print shirt and high heels. She had come to meet some of the men and women who had served the nation, not because she had a planned occasion. Spirit, as Theresa often claimed, operated in weird ways, and she sensed that someone there needed a message. Voices, clinking coffee cups, and laughing that covered over ancient scars filled the room. As Theresa looked around the gathering, she noticed a tall man seated by himself near the back. He had silver streaks in his hair. Despite his erect, nearly military-perfect stance, his eyes conveyed a sense of weight, loss, and an underlying emotion. Theresa felt the familiar tug of Spirit pushing her forward as her chest constricted. "Pardon me," she whispered softly as she walked up to him. "Spirit is bringing me to you, and I don't mean to bother you. Could I take a seat for a while?" The man gave her a startled but courteous glance. "Yes," he said. Years and memories had softened the harsh tone of his voice, which was that of someone accustomed to giving orders. As soon as she seated, Theresa put her palm to her heart. "Before I even start, sir, Spirit is thanking you for your service. I can feel the honor, the medals, and the uniform. They're expressing gratitude." Uncertain of how to react, the man blinked. "All right, so I was a Marine. 22 years. However, I have no idea what this is about." Leaning closer, Theresa said steadily, "A youthful feminine energy is emerging. She claims to be your sister. She died unexpectedly and much too soon. Do you think that makes sense?" The man's jaw tightened as he froze. "Yes," he whispered after taking a deep breath. "Claire, my sister. At the age of 21, she passed away. A vehicle collision. That was more than 40 years ago." Theresa gave a nod. "She claims that after all these years, she has been waiting for this chance to tell you that she has never abandoned you. She gives me the impression that she was your pillar of support during your formative years, helping you in ways that no one else could." The veteran's eyes filled with tears. "She was. When no one else had faith in me, she did. I wanted to honor her, so I enlisted in the Marines." Theresa grinned broadly. "She wants you to know that she was proud each and every day. She witnessed your boot camp graduation. Even if you felt alone during those lengthy deployments, she was standing by your side. She was right there when she showed me you reclining in the desert beneath the stars." In an attempt to conceal the emotion, the man put his hand to his face. His voice broke. "How were you aware of that?" "In Kuwait, there was a night. As I sat beneath the sky, I thought of her. I even said her name in a whisper. No one was aware of that." Theresa's eyes glistened and softened. "Honey, that's her confirmation. You were heard by her. She claims that she put her arms around you when you spoke to her. She needs you to get over your guilt about not being there to keep her safe when she passed away." The man trembled and shook his head. "I always thought I could have been the driver if I hadn't gone off for training that weekend. I could have prevented it. I could have." Theresa held his hand and interrupted softly. "No, no, no. That's not your burden," she says. "Tell him I wasn't meant to live a long life," she says. She tells me to let go of the what-ifs, and she smiles as she says, "I was meant to inspire him." You gave her meaning, even after she passed away, because you infused all of your good deeds with her memories. The air surrounding them was silent. The community center's buzz of chatter subsided, as though Spirit had encased them in a cocoon. Theresa went on, speaking more softly now. "She's also displaying a tiny necklace or locket to me. Have you anything of her left?" Instinctively, the man's hand reached for his shirt pocket. Carefully hidden into a pouch, he produced a battered silver locket with a broken chain. When he opened it, a small picture of a happy young woman appeared. "I've brought this with me on every deployment, every action.
She has accompanied me.
Theresa nodded, her eyes now streaming with tears. Thank you for keeping me alive in your heart, she says. She wants you to do more than merely survive, though, so it's time for you to live for yourself. She wants you to succeed, to chuckle, to be in love, to rediscover happiness. Decades of pain were released from the man's shoulders as he exhaled. Sobbing softly, he held the locket to his chest. I've been furious. So empty without her. However, it feels like I can breathe again after hearing this. Grinning, Theresa squeezed his hand. That is the spirit's gift. They never abandon us. They simply alter how they interact with us. And just so you know, Marine, your sister salutes you. Always. Semper Fi, Claire, the veteran whispered, laughing through his tears. Theresa remained silent and moved while they sat together for a short while longer. Something inside the man had changed irrevocably, but the community center's cacophony gradually reappeared. Theresa turned back to him as she got up to go, saying, You know, spirit always finds us when we need it most. It wasn't a random day. She wanted you to understand that you're never truly alone. The man sat higher as she left, not in military discipline but in serenity, and he carried the most important message of all. Love never dies. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mina, and I hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video.